Hi, my name is Chris Hood, Technical Product Specialist, and today we're going to discuss how to enable SQL auditing with Change Auditor. To enable SQL Server auditing, we will cover the following topics: enabling the SQL trace flag T1906, creating the SQL auditing template within Change Auditor, applying the SQL auditing template to an agent configuration, and finally, confirming audit events by search. To start, we will first want to enable the T1906 trace flag in the SQL Configuration Manager. Under the SQL services, we will right-click on the SQL Server MS SQL service and select Properties and finally the Advanced tab. Locate the startup parameters string, find the end, and add the semicolon dash T1906 trace flag, and click OK. This change does require a restart of the SQL service for the changes to take effect, and also this trace flag in itself is required in any SQL version 2008 SP1, Update 5, and higher. Now that we have the SQL trace flag configured, we can go ahead and validate a couple of prerequisites on the agent side. First, in the Change Auditor client under Help About, we want to make sure we have a Change Auditor for SQL license applied and that it's valid. In this case, we can see that we do. Next, under View Deployment, we want to make sure there is a Change Auditor agent installed on the SQL server and that it's connected. Here we can see that we do. The agent's active. So the prerequisites all seem accounted for, and we can move forward with configuring the SQL audit template under View Administration. Now, under Administration Tasks, we can click on the Auditing node with the magnifying glass and finally select the SQL Server area and create a new template by clicking the Add button. For this demo, we'll simply call our template test, and since we're working with a default named SQL instance, we can use the default option here. Otherwise, there are alternative options to use named instances if required, or if we have multiple instances, we could opt for the all instances option as well. For the sake of the demo, we will select a few common events to demonstrate the auditing template: audit create database, audit drop database, audit add DB user, audit add login, audit drop DB user, and finally audit drop login. Now that that's complete, we'll go ahead and click Next. Now there are some additional filtering options available, which we do not require for this scenario, but they may be required in other more elaborate configurations. For more information on these, please see the Change Auditor for SQL user guide. And finally, we will go ahead and click Finish here. And that concludes the creation of our SQL auditing template. Now that the template is defined, we can click on the configuration menu with the wrench and ensure that we have it applied to the agent in question. So for this purpose, we'll want to create a configuration specifically for our SQL Server. In this case, we'll simply call it SQL Server Configuration. And we'll go ahead and enable our test template by switching the assigned option from no to yes and clicking OK. Finally, let's go ahead and assign that configuration to the agent, and instead of waiting the polling interval, which by default is every 15 minutes, we're going to go ahead and refresh the configuration right away so that we can move forward with the testing. Now that we have a SQL template applied, we can try a quick experiment here to confirm the expected results. So let's go ahead and create a test database here. We'll simply call it TestDB. And then let's go ahead and create a SQL login. Simply call this test SQL user. Okay, and then let's go ahead and drop these items. So let's delete the database, TestDB, and also let's go ahead and delete TestSQL user. Now these events are forwarded rather quickly from the agent to the coordinator and placed in the database, so these events should be available in the client for searching at this point. So let's take a look. Here in the Change Auditor client, we can now search for the newly created events quite easily by creating a new search. So we'll select the private folder, which is our personal folder, and right-click New Search, and let's give this search a name, All SQL Events, and click Save. On the What tab, we're going to click the Add menu, Subsystem, SQL, and we're going to leave the filter set to all SQL instances since we don't need any specific filters in this case. And finally, on the When tab, let's limit the time frame to the last 5 minutes so that we only see the newest events, which are the test events we created recently. So here are our search results, and let's start with the oldest event first, which is the TestDB created event. Of course, you can see all the pertinent details associated with that TestDB being created, who created the database, where, in this case SQL Server, origin, which is the SQL Server as well, since we were logged into the SQL Server when that was performed. The next event is the TestSQL user added to SQL Server event, so we can see the event for creation of our TestSQL user, again with all the pertinent details. Next we have the drop database for the TestDB, and subsequently the drop login for the deletion of the TestSQL user account.